Hello and welcome to a special March Madness edition of Action Island presented by FanDuel. My name is Marino and I'm here with our college basketball experts Anthony Dabbundo, Charlie DiSturco, and Mike Calabrese. They're going to give me their favorite bets from each region to help you with your NCAA men's basketball tournament, brackets, and so much more. We're also going to check in with Darren Rovell for the latest on the betting markets around this tournament. And we're going to cap things off with a little Final Four parlay as well. By the way, everything we discuss here, including picks, can be found in our award-winning Action app. This March, take your first shot at college hoops with FanDuel Sportsbook and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets, up to $200. Bet $20 on the bracket and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. Plus, FanDuel is now live in Massachusetts. Download the app and take advantage of their great special offers, boosts, and more. Terms and conditions apply. So let's get to it. We're going to start in the South. That's where Alabama is the #1 seed. Anthony, give us a big picture bet you like for this region.
So we've done a few shows now this week, and there's one team that I've been targeting since a few weeks ago, really, and it's Utah State to make a potential little run here. Not a big run, but a little run in March Madness. They are plus 440 to make the Sweet 16. I think they're undervalued in their first matchup against Missouri, so that therefore, this is strongly correlated. I think they're undervalued to make the Sweet 16 as well. They match up really well with Missouri, a team that does not guard the perimeter well at all, one of the worst perimeter defenses in the country. That's where Utah State thrives, and Utah State does a much better job defensively of guarding the three-point line, where Missouri is excellent. The Tigers were one of the luckiest teams in the country this year in close games, ran really well, and are the worst defense of all the at-larges in this field. So I think Utah State has an advantage there. Then the second round matchup, likely against Arizona, would be an interesting one. Both teams have offensive advantages, though, and it's really going to be an interesting chess match because Arizona has Tubelis and Ballo, who can dominate inside in the post. Utah State's pretty bad defensively in the post, but what happens at the other end of the floor? Arizona, Tubelis is going to get pulled out by Taylor Funk. They play a lot of 4, sometimes 5 out. They rim run and run a lot of ball screens. They're going to make Ballo and Tubelis guard. That's going to be a major problem for Arizona on the perimeter defensively. So I think there's an interesting matchup angle there where Utah State can exploit Arizona and maybe pick them off. So at plus 440, I like the Aggies.
It's also interesting with Kirkisa, right? Like his injury, how much is that going to affect their offense as the primary ball handler? And you just can tell his shooting was off in the Pac-12 tournament. How much does that factor over? How healthy is he? It's a very interesting take right there in the second round.
By the way, I like your choice of SpongeBob attire as well. Breeze, what do you have for us?
That's a pretty spicy take, Utah State to the Sweet 16, but I'm going to do you one better. I'm going to go for almost an 8-1 shot, Furman to make the Sweet 16. They can really shoot the basketball, 10th in shooting efficiency. They lead the country #1 in terms of shooting accuracy inside the three-point arc. And they're up against a Virginia team that's just leaking oil coming into this tournament. They failed to exceed 64 points in 8 of their last 11 games. So if Furman can speed them up a little bit, I'm not sure that Virginia has the horses to keep up. And then when you look at what it's going to take outside of that, San Diego State can't shoot. And then College of Charleston, they shoot more threes than any team in the country, but they don't do it all that well. They're 211th in three-point shooting percentage, so they can shoot their way out of a round of 32 game. And then from just a star perspective, you need to have really go-to guys at this point in the tournament. And to be able to punch a ticket to the Sweet 16, you have Bothwell and Slauson, both Lou Henson Award finalists. That's the Mid-Major Player of the Year award. So in terms of star power, the Dins have it in spades. I like them to go all the way to the Sweet 16.
Charlie?
Yeah, I do like that pick. I feel like it's become a popular one with Furman and upsetting Virginia, so that'll be interesting. I'm going to go, you guys went with long shots to make the Sweet 16. I'm going to play safe, right? I'm going to start out easy. Honestly, most of my picks kind of a little bit lower stakes. I'm going Creighton, plus 168 to make the Sweet 16. Listen, their first round matchup against NC State, I like their chances here. I think Kalkbrenner is going to have his way in the post and in the pick and roll against DJ Burns. I just don't think Burns is going to be able to guard him and really go up against that 7'1" stature. And with Kalkbrenner and how much attention he's going to get, Creighton has enough shooters on the perimeter to really do some damage, right? Nemhard, Alexander, Shireman, the transfer. They really can do some damage from the perimeter. They can light it up. They haven't been as great at times as of late, but I really like their chances here against NC State. They're top 30 when it comes to offense and defensive efficiency in Ken Palm. I just think they have really what it takes to be a well-rounded squad to get past that first round matchup. And then in the second round, they draw the winner of Baylor UC Santa Barbara. Dabbundo, you've talked plenty of times about how UCSB, the Gauchos, are live to beat Baylor. Baylor, any given night, their three-point shooting can be off, and in general, they are a very weak interior defense, and that's not good against Kalkbrenner. Kalkbrenner's going to have his way against the interior of Baylor. He's going to get multiple second-chance opportunities, and I think Creighton matches up well. They force people off the perimeter, and that's what Baylor wants to do. So I think that when you look at it, whether they get the Gauchos, whether they get Baylor in that second round, I think Creighton is going to be favored in that matchup, and I like taking them at plus money here. And as we talked right before the show, both teams are below average in pick and roll defense when it comes to Baylor and NC State, and those are the two that they'll most likely face in those opening rounds. So I like getting Creighton here at plus money.
Yeah,
So-
Baylor's on fraud watch officially. Putting them
Fraud
on,
watch?
Putting them on fraud watch.
Got it.
Yes.
Do you need to take the shades off to see the fraud watch?
No,
Or,
the shades are staying on for now, but I'll be taking them off later when I want to make a statement.
Yes. Okay. I'll keep an eye out for that. But in all seriousness, we have 3 picks there to make the Sweet 16, all at plus money with Utah State, Furman, and Creighton in the South. Next up, we'll head to the East region. Purdue is the number 1 seed there. And the consensus from Action Network analysts seems to be that this is the weakest region of the 4. Anthony, who do you think can make a run?
So I think Kentucky has a decent path here to the Sweet 16. They're going to get Providence in the first round. Providence is a team that really fell off at the end of the season. They were not playing their best basketball. These two teams are actually quite similar in how they like to get to the offensive glass to get their offense, but Kentucky's a much better first shot offense. I think that's a major key here. And also, Providence's post defense has actually been a pretty significant weakness. We've saw that as the season has gone on. Ed Croswell is solid but undersized in the middle. I think Sheboy should be able to get a good offensive showing there in the post, and Providence had struggled down the stretch there. So you can kind of go straight at Providence interior, and their defense really fell off. If you look at some of the metrics, 2-point defense, rim defense, much worse than it was earlier in the season. So I think Kentucky has a good matchup there with Providence, two teams that are pretty similar, but Kentucky's just playing much better basketball, top 15 in efficiency since February 12th. So they've been playing a lot better. And then they get, I think, what is the most overrated 3 seed in Kansas State, who they match up really well with and would dominate the offensive glass in that matchup. Kansas State, very undersized, very guard dominant. Kentucky has not guarded consistently this season, but they will have so much of an advantage on the interior that I think that's a good matchup at plus 160 to make the Sweet 16. Kentucky's kind of flying under the radar a little bit. Everybody was waiting for them to turn the corner. They had that really bad loss in the SEC tournament. I'm not counting them out in terms of, in a weak region to get to the second weekend. I don't really see them as a Final Four team. Like I said, not consistent enough defensively. But at plus 160 to make the Sweet 16, I think that's who I'll have coming out of that little quadrant.
They're the 6th-ranked team in the last 30 days per Bart Torvik. So, they're, as you said, under the radar, 3rd best offense as far as efficiency. Do love that play as well.
Wanting to make up for what happened last year in the NCAA tournament. Of course, Breeze, what do you have in this region?
So I'm going to go with Marquette to win the region at plus 370, and the obvious concern is it's been 10 years since Shaka Smart has gotten out of the first round of the NCAA tournament. So get out of that first game, and then I'm starting to feel good about the Golden Eagles because they're 8th in effective field goal percentage. They do not turn the ball over. They're actually plus 5.4 in the turnover margin per game. That's 3rd nationally. And what that equates to is they're not giving away extra opportunities to their opponent. Tyler Kolek is a phenomenal facilitator. March is all about guards. He's going to have the ball in every crunch time possession. He had 8+ assists in 5 Big East games this year. He also shoots just about 40% from 3-point range. And when I look at how they're playing down the stretch, 14-1 straight up. They just won the Big East tournament at Madison Square Garden. They're going back there for the regional here. I think that's a lot of good momentum and good juju for the Golden Eagles. So I'm going to go ahead with Shaka Smart breaking out of his funk in March Madness and getting it done.
I like that a lot, especially coming off that Big East championship that you mentioned and that being such a competitive conference. Charlie, what about you?
Yeah, I will say Kolek, the college basketball John Stockton at this point. What he's been doing is incredible. But I'm going to go with another champion, not to win the region, but I'm going with Duke to make the Sweet 16 here at plus 170. And I know I'm going against my boy Easy Breezy Cover Girl.
Easy for you to say.
Stumbling on my words right there. But Duke plus 170 to make the Sweet 16, right? We got Oral Roberts in the first round. I know you're heavily on Oral Roberts, but I do have some concerns when it comes to Oral Roberts as a whole, right? Can Vanover really take advantage and pull out Lively? Maybe. Maybe they flip and put Filipowski on him. Who knows how they attacked it? But I really think Duke has such heavy size inside that if Vanover gets a quick couple fouls, then all of a sudden the game is completely blown open, and Oral Roberts will not have the size to get against Duke. And Duke is one of the they are the tallest team in the country. They're going to be on the offensive glass. I really like them to win against Oral Roberts, right? Whether or not it's a close game and they cover and whatnot, that's a different story. But I think they get through that first round matchup. And then it's the second round matchup, which is Tennessee and Louisiana. Tennessee without Zakai Ziegler. We've talked plenty of times about how their offense is incredibly inefficient right now, and now they lost their starting point guard, who really was a big reason why Tennessee won some of these games, right? Like betting against them and losing so many times, it was because Ziegler has completely taken over a game. He's gone now. The freshmen are really finding their groove at Duke. We're seeing Lively really step up on the defensive end and even the offensive end. Proctor, double figures in 6 of his last 7. It's hard because everyone is on Duke now. Everyone's talking about Duke, which is why I'm playing it safer, going with the Sweet 16, because that matchup against Purdue does scare me, or Memphis, with how good Memphis has been playing as of late.
Whether or not it's just narrative, it does seem obvious to everyone out there, but I definitely like that value at plus 170 for Duke. And we still have the Midwest and the West regions to get to, but first, let's break for halftime and get a market report from Darren Rovell.
Thanks, Maria. Let's get to some interesting splits for Thursday and Friday games. We'll start off with Howard, plus 20.5 against Kansas. Only 51% of the money is on Kansas in that 116 matchup. A lot of people talking about Kent State, a 4.5-point dog against Indiana. That handle currently is at 50-50. So obviously people liking the underdog there, maybe to cover, maybe actual money line. Then we have some of the more lopsided games. UNC Asheville is a 17.5-point dog against UCLA. 53% of the bets are on the Bruins, but 82.5% of the money is. And then Colgate is a 14-point dog against Texas. They are getting almost all the money, 76% of the money, but only 57% of the bets. And finally, Montana State, 8.5-point dog against Kansas State. 82% of the money is on Montana State. Now let's get you over to some totals that are interesting in terms of what is really lopsided, what people like. The total for Arkansas, Illinois is 146, and 95% of the money is on the under. The total for West Virginia, Maryland's been this team that does not lose at home and loses everything else on the road. 137 is the total there. 93% of the money is on the under. So all these lopsided ones are all on unders, and that's obviously not par for the course. 152.5 is the total for Iowa Auburn. 91% of the money is on the under, and 132 is the total for Virginia Furman. 88% of the money is on the under. And by the way, I do have 2 picks that I really like, so you can obviously decide what you want to do there. But I like the over in Duke Oral Roberts. Now, this is contrary to the data because Duke is 13-20-1 to the over, so they're 20-13 to the under. And Oral Roberts is 17-13-1 to the under, so it's contrarian as far as the stats go, but the issue is these guys have not had close matchups. And if you look at free throw shooting, Oral Roberts is number 2 out of tournament teams in free throw shooting. Duke is number 4. I think this is going to be a close matchup. Obviously, 6.5 is the spread. And I think we're going to hit the over of 145.5. It assumes Oral Roberts is going to score 69 points. They've scored 69 points in every game this season. So that's my first, the over in Duke Oral Roberts. And then my second is taking Creighton as 5-point favorites against NC State. People might have this, it might be a hard time to swallow this thing because they got killed by Xavier by 22 in the Big East semis, but this is a great team. I'm not worried about them getting a letdown after just playing horrible. And here's an interesting stat. NCAA tournament teams who lost their last game by at least 20 are 21-12 against the number dating back to 2007. So that actually happens to be Creighton's record as well, 21-12. So I am taking Creighton -5 against NC State. And reminding you, this March, take your first shot at college hoops with FanDuel Sportsbook and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. Bet $20 on the bracket and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. Plus, FanDuel is now live in Massachusetts. Download the app now and take advantage of their great offers, boosts, and more. Terms and conditions apply. Maria, back to you.
Darren, thank you. Now, guys, before we get into the Midwest region specifically, what do we make of Rovell's bets? Charlie, we're going to start with you because you like Creighton to make the Sweet 16. You think they cover against the Wolfpack.
Darren, why did you do this to me? Like I've been one of his longest friends, or one of my longest friends since I've been at the company. Now he's trying to chalk my Creighton bet. Your Creighton bet too. We're all on the Blue Jays here. Listen, I like the under in Oral Roberts, mostly because both of those teams have been under teams this entire season. Everyone's going to think that there's going to be a lot of points in that game, but I think that there's going to be a lot of three-point shooting, and with three-point shooting comes volatility and missed threes, and I think Duke's perimeter defense is going to be strong enough to at least slow down Oral Roberts, and I think that, I expect Creighton to win and make it to the Sweet 16, so if I had to pick one of Darren's picks, I will hesitantly say it's going to be Creighton -5.
Okay, meanwhile, Calabrese, you've been on this Duke-Oral Roberts matchup pretty much since Selection Sunday. Is that the one that you would pick out of Rovell's picks?
I would go over. I'm going to join him on this one. I think it's a little bit overblown, the under factor. I know that Duke plays, by Duke standards, at a snail's pace. They're 309th in possessions per game. But when you look at one element that both of these teams play at an elite level, it's from the charity stripe. They're both top 25 in foul shooting as teams, and I think either way, if it's Oral Roberts chasing Duke or Duke's trying to orchestrate a comeback at the end, they're putting the Golden Eagles on the line. I think you're going to see a lot of points in those last 3 minutes of the game. So the fact that it's checking in the mid 140s, I'm going to go with the over here.
Do you have an opinion on this, on either of these?
I would take Creighton too. I think NC State's going to have problems in ball screen defense for sure. DJ Burns is not particularly good at guarding out on the perimeter, and Kalkbrenner, rim running, I think can cause problems for NC State. I'm also just out on them as a team. They didn't have any particularly impressive away or neutral court wins, and it's going to be a more partisan Creighton crowd playing in the Midwest. So I think it's a good matchup for Creighton, and that the worries with Creighton, like their depth, don't come into consideration necessarily in the first game compared to the second or the third.
All right, so agreeing with Rovell on some things here. Now, to the Midwest, Houston is the top overall seed in the tourney. Anthony, how do you like their title chances?
Yeah, I think they're the rightful title favorites because of this path. I think they got a very, very friendly draw to the Elite Eight. And that's why I'm betting the -120 to make the Elite Eight. I think of all the 1 seeds, and you look at the path from the first round to the Elite Eight, nothing's easier. Kansas has a tricky potential with Arkansas and some good 4 or 5 seeds. Purdue has a potential with Memphis in the second round. Even Alabama gets a scrappy West Virginia team in round 2. So all those have some potential landmines. I really don't see any for Houston here. Houston has, I think, the highest floor of the top 1 seeds because of how well they defend. And how physical they are. They get potentially Iowa or Auburn in the second round. Both teams have major flaws that I think Houston can exploit, whether it's Auburn's guards or Iowa's lack of defending. And I think this region could also get blown up by upsets. I mean, we've talked about how Miami and Indiana are both vulnerable in the first round on other shows here. I think that if you're getting a 13 or a 12 or even a beat up Miami by this time you get to the Sweet 16, it's a very friendly path for Houston. So I'm going to take the Cougs. Trust Kelvin Sampson. They've been to the Elite Eight and the Final Four the last 2 tournaments, and they have a great core of talent.
What's your overall risk tolerance with Sasser potentially not playing 1 game? Obviously, you want him back in the round of 32, but if he were to miss the entire first weekends, how nervous are you?
I'm not too worried. Groins can be tricky, right? That's the one scary thing. Like the inner leg is a lot of explosive muscle and pull and pushing off and stuff like that. I thought that was the moment to whip
the glasses off.
Yeah,
groins can be tricky.
As somebody who had a small tear in their groin last year, it is not a fun injury to rehab, but I do think that as long as Sasser's there for the second weekend, they'll be fine. I'm not worried about him necessarily in the first weekend because they do have some good depth. I know they lost to Memphis. Everybody's saying, it's because they didn't have Sasser. Memphis is a matchup issue for Houston and played their best game of the season. Houston, I think, was getting ready for the selection show and not as concerned about it.
Memphis almost beat them before a
right,
few weeks before
Sasser.
with a fully healthy Sasser, right?
Exactly.
If it wasn't for a shed game winner, they win that game too. So it's a little overblown there with that Memphis win.
Yeah.
All right, Charlie, what are you looking to bet in the Midwest region?
I'm going with another minus play here with Anthony, but I'm going with Texas to make the Sweet 16 here at minus 130. Make sure to shop around for this one. It's a great bet, right? They get Colgate in the opening round of 64. I love this matchup for Texas. They're long, they're athletic, they're disruptive. Colgate loves to shoot the three. I think Texas's on-ball pressure is going to get to Colgate, and we haven't seen Colgate beat anyone of high caliber. They get rolled over by opponents that are better than them, good defensive opponents. So I think Texas has a pretty easy first-round matchup. And then it comes down to Texas A&M and Penn State. I think they have the physicality to match A&M, and I think Penn State a little bit overblown with how good they are and how much the public loves them. It's the complete darling. Yes, they have the three-point shooting, but I think Texas just matches up well altogether. They have the size in the front court that Penn State lacks. Christian Bishop and Dylan Dessou have been absolutely incredible the past month, and that doesn't even mention Dylan Mitchell, who's been great as well in that big man group. Experience is key in the big dance, right? Like, they're seventh most experienced team in the entire country. Jabari Rice has been phenomenal. Marcus Carr is the star of the offense. It's just everything you look at, Texas just has everything covered. They're top 20 in offense and defensive efficiency. Even without Timmy Allen, they ran through the Big 12 tournament and blew out Kansas in the title game. They're the number 2 team in the last 30 days. I think they have a pretty easy path. Like Anthony said, for Houston, I think Texas has the same exact easy path, and then it's just a matter of who you like more in that Elite Eight. I'm going to play it a little bit more safer and avoid Xavier in that Sweet 16 matchup and just take them to make the Sweet 16 here at minus 130.
Meanwhile, Breeze, you love Texas as well.
I mean, Charlie talked me into it at this point. Win the whole region. I agree. It's the overall balance. Top 20 in both offensive and defensive efficiency, according to Ken Pom. And Dylan Dessou's maturation down the stretch. He now gives them a 10-point per game or higher scorer, which basically means they have 5 starters who can pop off in that regard. I like that balance. I also like the fact that even though they struggle a little bit on the glass, that's one element where they're giving extra possessions to their opponent. They don't turn the ball over. So by being 10th in turnover margin in the country, they're able to turn opponents over. They protect the basketball, just about 10 turnovers per game. I think that mitigates some of the risks and some of the downside with their roster. And overall, the Big 12, we can all agree, was the best conference in college basketball this year. It's my opinion that the way that they finished, the way that they smacked around Kansas, I think that gives them the confidence and the edge that they potentially lost with all the off-court issues earlier in the season with Chris Beard. I think that's so far in their rearview mirror that they're locked in. And really, this comes down to price.
Yeah.
4-1 to me moves the needle. If this was, plus 250, I'd probably just go with a rollover situation, starting in the Sweet 16. But instead, getting 4-1 against a Houston team that, as you mentioned, is Sasser 100% when he comes back? Because if he's not that same guy, I'm not sure the Cougars are going to be able to survive. So you may not even see an all-Texas regional final.
That is a concern, especially for Houston. You mentioned it, they're the favorite to win this whole thing. A lot of people are going to be on them, but have to watch out for that injury. Finally, we have what's generally considered the toughest region of the 4, and that is the West. Defending champs, the Kansas Jayhawks, own the 1 seed. Anthony, what do you got for this?
So I actually like 2 different bets here, and they're both quite juiced, and I think there's value on both of them. But if you don't want to lay minus 240, minus 220, you can parlay them together. Get them down to minus 103, but it's UCLA to make the Sweet 16, St. Mary's to miss. 2 bets that I like, individual and together. UCLA gets a matchup in the first round that I'm not too concerned about against UNC Asheville, the worst of the 15 seeds. I know that they're dealing with some injuries right now, but they also would get a second-round matchup with Boise or Northwestern, which I said on our live show Sunday. I was looking to play against both teams in March. They play each other. Somebody will win that game. I will look to play against them, and this is how I'm looking to do it with UCLA to get to the second weekend. I think that UCLA will have problems without Clark down the road in this tournament, but I don't think those problems will show up the first weekend. They still have enough depth, enough scoring, enough experience. They guard, and they're well coached. I think UCLA makes the Sweet 16, and I'm playing against St. Mary's, a team that I've thought was overvalued for the better part of the second half of the season. We saw them really start to struggle down the stretch in the WCC, putting away inferior opponents, even coming down against the press with BYU and Gonzaga, a little 3-quarter court pressure. VCU is going to do that to the extreme. Ace Baldwin, I think, could put Aiden Mahaney in a really difficult matchup in that first-round game. You've talked about the body clock and the time zone change that could affect St. Mary's against VCU in the first round. And then St. Mary's would get likely UConn in the second round. in Albany, that's going to be a very pro UConn crowd. So they're essentially playing road games here, and I think that's going to be really tough for Marys to get through both of those matchups. When I think they're close to a coin flip just to win the first game.
I actually want to go to Charlie here now because I see you nodding your head about UConn. What do you got?
Yeah, plus 100 to make the Sweet 16. I'm with Dabbundo on this one, right? I think UConn has a pretty good first round matchup against Iona. I don't think Iona is going to be able to combat their size down low as much as Breeze has talked about in our Cinderella draft. He had to draft Iona, but I think at the end of the day, it was more just who was left, more so than actually thinking that they're going to be an upset team. And then it goes off the St. Mary's and VCU point. Like, I think UConn is going to pretty much manhandle either team in Albany in front of a more pro UConn crowd. They're the number 3 team in the last 30 days when Bart Torvik's ranking. They're top 20 in offense and defensive efficiency. We keep going back to those numbers because when it comes to that, those are incredibly important numbers, according to Ken Palm, and just for long-standing success in the NCAA tournament. And I think UConn, just their overwhelming size from point guard to center, right? Every single player is long, athletic. A lot of them can shoot. All of them can rebound. They're the number 1 offensive rebounding team in the country. Donovan Clingan is great at Damasanogo. Unbelievable. So they literally have everything that it takes to be a successful mold of a team. And they got an unlucky draw in this region, right? Any other region, I think they just about easily walk through and go to the Final Four. But they force opponents off the outside, the perimeter, force them inside, which is where Clingan and Sanogo wait. And I think that their defense and length is really going to be disruptive here. They're going to get a ton of second chance opportunities. And I don't like either VCU or Mary's in that second round matchup. And kind of going off his point with St. Mary's, I think they're a bit overrated, and the travel is just going to eventually take a toll after the second day.
Breeze, what do you make of that? And also, what do you like in this region?
I agree with his assessment on UConn. I think they're just a matchup problem, and just not many teams are used to opponents that can crash the board so aggressively for 40 minutes. In terms of my pick, I threw out a lot of long shots and plus money plays, so I don't feel guilty taking Gonzaga minus 160 to make the Sweet 16. The headline here is Mark Few has gone to the Sweet 16 in 7 straight tournaments. And he also has the motivational factor in that they lose in the regular season to St. Mary's in the game they dominated for 39 minutes, ends up going to overtime, and they lose that game. And the national media was, Gonzaga has fallen off. They're not a top 10 team. Writing them off, left for dead. I call them the zombie Zags from then on out because in the last 9 games, they've scored almost 93 points per game. And then when you look at their road, Grand Canyon is going to be a speed bump. They're going to get fed right into the wood chipper in this game. They're 198th in Ken Palm defensive efficiency. And then in the second round, if you catch TCU, they can't shoot from 3. So are they really going to score 80, 90 points and beat Gonzaga? Not for my money. So I'm going to go ahead and lay the minus 160 and take the Zags to the Sweet 16.
I like it, and I may like that in our next segment as well. We're going to talk about who each of us thinks can make the Final Four and get a little parlay action going, all right? So, Anthony, what do you got?
All right, it's time to get serious here.
There we go.
Look, I think the narrative on Purdue has gone way too far in the opposite direction, and I'm now actually looking to buy in on Purdue in this region. I think in other regions, if they had been put in the top of the West, we might be having a very different conversation right now. But in this region, with the weakest 2 seed, the weakest 3 seed, a 4 without their point guard, a 5 that I think is overvalued off of this recent tournament run, and a Memphis team that also just won its conference tournament. Like, they got paired with all of the darlings, the underdogs that just won their conference tournaments, and now everybody wants to look to play. So everybody's saying, just writing off Purdue. This is not the Purdue teams of years past that struggled defensively. This is a Purdue team that won the Big Ten by 3 games in the regular season, rolled through the conference tournament, beat the ACC champion by double digits, beat the Big East champion, played West Virginia, beat them by 20. Like this, they've run through just about everybody you could possibly ask them to do in this tournament during the season, and it's really hard to score against them at the rim because of Edey's length. And I know teams try to draw them out, but Edey actually does an underrated job in ball screen defense and guarding on the perimeter, and kind of they cover for him well. And so I think that works. And given that they're in the weakest region full of overvalued teams, the only team that I'm scared of matchup-wise is Memphis. And they could press and cause some problems for sure. But once they get past Memphis, I think they're rolling to the Final Four here. And I'm going to be on an island. I'm Purdue Island.
You're in the trust tree here on Action Islands. How much of a relief would it be to get FAU in the round to 32?
I would love FAU. And they're a great team. Don't get me wrong. I think they were underseeded. But yes, if FAU were to win, I'd feel much better about the matchup. But again, everybody's going to be going against Purdue in your brackets. I think you're going to see a lot of people saying that, oh, Purdue, this is classic. They never make the Final Four. Matt Painter in March. I think that's just an overplayed narrative. And that Purdue team last year couldn't guard. Jaden Ivey disappeared in a big moment. But this Purdue team is more balanced.
In defense of Purdue.
Yes.
You have me sold. Mike, your turn.
I'm going to go with Creighton here, and we discussed it ad nauseum in all of the content here, the Action app on all of our videos, but they're so balanced. All five starters, I should say, can go for 11 or more per game. And one element that I really like during March, it can be an equalizer for good defensive teams, is when they put teams to the line too often. Creighton does not do that. They are the third lowest fouling team in this tournament in terms of putting teams to the foul line. So I really like that element, and they're also an elite defensive rebounding team. So when you put it that way, it's like there's not extra opportunities, there's not freebies from the line. Teams are going to have to earn it to knock them out, and I believe that their path having to go through Baylor and potentially Arizona as well. Those are teams that have shown me through this season that they can play down to their opponents, that they can have struggles offensively. So I'm going to go ahead and go with Creighton. I think the Baylor game in particular is going to be my indication of how serious this run's going to be. In your defense that gives up easy points in the paint left and right, then I think they're a real shot to win their region, go to the Final Four. I actually have them going all the way to the title game. So I'm all on the Blue Jays this year.
Oh, indeed.
Creighton is third in foul rate defensively in the country. Purdue, first.
All right,
So
okay.
Baylor up.
Definitely. Charlie?
Yeah, I'm not going to go with the second in the foul rate department between you guys, but I do love that Creighton pick. And like you said, getting Baylor off that offensive glass, which is where they eat, and that's what Creighton does so tremendously well. And Baylor Scheinman has done an incredible job in that front. I'm going to go with Texas here. Right, I know you like the Cougars to come out, but I am concerned with Marcus Sasser and the injury and how much Houston fouls. If they find themselves in foul trouble, Texas is an offense that loves to attack inside and they love to get physical. And I think and I expect that to happen against Houston here. And I just trust a team that's extremely experienced. I talked about it and why I took them to get to the Sweet 16. They're a top 25 offense and defense as far as efficiency goes. And here's a little nugget for you guys. Since 2002, all but one team that has won the national title, which was UConn, and when they were a low seed, have been in the top 25 of offensive and defensive efficiency per KenPom. Who's in that list? There's 5. Texas, Houston, Alabama, UConn, UCLA. UCLA has injury problems. Houston, we just talked about a bunch of times how much their injury problems could come up here. Alabama, who knows what's going on with their front. They might have had their mojo back, but that's a later discussion when Texas gets to the championship game. And then in then UConn, that'll be a Final Four, which obviously none of those teams are in my bracket other than Houston. I think Texas rolls here. I love the Horns, so hook them.
All right, well, I actually have to make a choice here on this show.
Round it out.
You talked about experience and defense winning championships. He's loving this already. I'm gonna say Gonzaga to make the Final Four. I have them beating UConn to get there. A lot of hype with Sonogo. You talked about it. That's warranted for the most part, but I feel like Drew Timmy's experience. How old is he now? I don't even know. But the maturity, he's been in this situation before, so I think he can help Gonzaga get back into the semifinals. Now, we crunch the numbers on FanDuel, Charlie and I. If you're looking at odds for this Final Four and all 4 of these teams making it, it would be at plus 98,180. So wouldn't be a bad payday for either of us if that hit. And look, we have a lot more programming here on Action Network to help you fill out your brackets. For more help, definitely tune in at 6 p.m. Wednesday for our Road to the Final Score bracket reveal show. That's going to be on Action Network's YouTube, Twitter, and of course, the Action app. Fellas, I think that's a show. We've gone through every region. We even gave you a Final Four parlay. Good luck with that. For Anthony Dabbundo, Charlie DiSturco, Mike Calabrese, I'm Maria Marino. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next time. Enjoy March, everybody.